Let's take a look at this activity as an example of a typical sentence completion. And this comes from section 4 of a listening exam. So we're going to hear one lecturer explaining the entire thing. Now we want to look for the first step. Just want to notice here, no more than 2 words for each answer. And then the first thing we want to do is look for keywords. We want to very quickly scan for some keywords. Let's just look at the first half of our activity to begin. Okay, 31 to 35. Now, we want to look for Britain and maybe colonize as well. Smoke is going to be very important here. Okay, possibly illegal activities as well. Next, oils. Okay, and to prevent something spreading, the spread of something. Then we have food and drink next, and berries. And for number 35, insects and something. Okay, insects and something. First step, notice those keywords. Now mentally, as you're highlighting keywords or underlining keywords, you should be thinking about some possible synonyms as well. If you have time, you can write them in on your test sheet, but at least mentally, you should be thinking about synonyms. For example, in number 34, food and drink. Okay, think about maybe some specific foods, right? You could be thinking of meat or drink, maybe wine. Okay, wine or water, milk. Think about some examples of drink. When you're listening to number 34, the words food and drink may not appear in the script. So you need to keep your mind open for synonyms or something more specific or more general. Okay? The word spreading. I think of different words that could also be used to explain this meaning of spreading, moving out, moving to new regions, right? Illegal activities, anything related to breaking the law, right? A lot of different words that could be used. Or, let's see, insects, maybe we'll have some specific insects that will be mentioned. Ants, bees, things like that. Okay? So that's the first step. Notice the keywords and open your mind to the synonyms. The next thing is to predict at least the part of speech for each answer here. So let's look at number 1. After the last something, this is going to be a noun. Last is an adjective, so some kind of noun here. And we might predict the last century, the last war, the last something, some kind of historical moment maybe. Its smoke is virtually something. That must be an adjective. Okay, smoke is what? Is big, is small, is maybe poisonous. Okay, now I know from collocation that virtually often matches with something like invisible. Virtually means almost invisible, right? Or almost, what would be another word for invisible? I'm going to predict invisible just based on my knowledge of collocation. The connection between the word virtually and invisible, very common. Number 33, used to prevent blank spreading. Okay, the spread of something, it must be a noun. All right. 34, its berries are widely used to blank food and drink. We know this must be a verb. Something food and drink. What could the berries do? To flavor food and drink? To enhance food and drink? Remember that 2 words are possible, so there's quite a bit of variety that could be used. And 35, juniper plants also support several species of insects and blank. So we will hear a plural noun. Okay, a plural noun. Insects and animals? Insects and flowers, perhaps? Some kind of living thing. All right, so the 2 steps there, keywords to help you follow the listening and give you something to listen for. And then finally, checking the part of speech. And maybe you can predict a little more than part of speech. Like here, we know it's a plural noun. We also know that it's some kind of living thing. It's a species of something, okay? So you want to be as prepared as possible. Of course, your time is limited. Okay, so I have spent a good 5 minutes explaining this, stepping through it. You will have only 30 seconds. Okay, so a lot of this must be done mentally. However, I strongly encourage you to use your pencil, okay, to circle things, underline things, especially the keywords. Okay, use your pencil to underline those things. And if a word kind of comes to your mind here, write it down in the blank before you listen. It'll help get your mind prepared for what you might hear. The more you practice that, the better you will get as time goes by. Now, let's go ahead and listen to the script, and we will try to listen and catch the right answers for numbers 31 to 35. Here we go.
For my presentation, I'm going to summarise what I've found out about efforts to save one plant species, the juniper bush. It once flourished in Britain and throughout the world's temperate zones, but over the last few decades has declined considerably. Before I go on to explain the steps being taken to save it in England, let me start by looking at some background information and why the juniper has been so important in cultural as well as ecological terms, historically and in the present day. Firstly, I want to emphasise the fact that juniper is a very ancient plant. It has been discovered that it was actually amongst the first species of plants to establish itself in Britain in the period following the most recent Ice Age. And, as I say, it has a much valued place in British culture. It was used widely as a fuel during the Middle Ages because when burnt, the smoke given off is all but invisible, and so any illicit activities involving fire could go on without being detected. For example, cooking game hunted illegally. It also has valuable medicinal properties. Particularly during large epidemics, oils were extracted from the juniper wood and sprayed in the air to try to prevent the spread of infection in hospital wards. And these days, perhaps its most well-known use is in cuisine, cooking, where its berries are a much valued ingredient, used to flavour a variety of meat dishes and also drinks. Turning now to ecological issues, juniper bushes play an important role in supporting other living things. If juniper bushes are wiped out, this would radically affect many different insect and also fungus species. We simply cannot afford to let this species die out.
Now, let's look through our script and see if we can find the correct answers for 31 through 34. These first 2 sections here actually do not give us any information. This is all just introduction. 31 actually appears starting here. So let's start here. Firstly, I want to emphasize that juniper, so we got juniper colonized Britain. Those were some of our keywords. So juniper established itself in Britain. Okay, and then we actually have here the most recent, which matches with the last. So our answer here, Ice Age. Number 31, Ice Age. All right, and number 32 is next. It was used widely as a fuel. I'm not sure that we caught the word fuel as a key word, but we should have. We had fuel, illegal activities, and smoke. We might hear the word virtually. We see smoke appear here, and the word all but is all but invisible. That is the same meaning as virtually, almost, nearly, all but. Okay, so our answer, as we predicted, is going to be invisible. Number 32, invisible. And we see our other keywords appear after. Illicit activities, the same as illegal activities, or here, illegally. All right. Next, it also has valuable medicinal properties. We're looking for oils to prevent some kind of spreading. So we see here oils were extracted from the juniper wood and sprayed in the air to try to prevent the spread of what? Some kind of noun. Is it the spread of hospital wards? No, the spread of infection. The answer, infection. And then moving on to 34, its berries are widely used to blank food and drink, some kind of verb for food and drink. We see cuisine, cooking, okay, related to food and drink, right? As I told you, we probably won't hear the word food and drink. We'll hear something else. It's berries. Oops, sorry, I used the wrong color there. Let's go back to yellow. Cuisine, cooking, berries. And we have meat dishes and drinks here. So used to what? Used to, the word flavor appears. And you might be accustomed to the word flavor as a noun, which it can be used as a noun. In this case, we're using flavor as a verb. Okay, but once we know that number 34 must be a verb, that's what we're listening for. We're listening for that verb. We don't see any verbs in here except the verb flavor. Okay, maybe you might be confused with valued, but does valued make sense? Used to value food and drink? No, that doesn't match. Let's turn our attention to number 35. We said before we were looking for juniper plants and several species of insects and something. Insects is a big key word for this one. So I see juniper bushes and I see living things. So living things, when you hear that, we know that number 35 is probably coming due to this keyword of insects. Okay. And we can hear right here many different insects and also fungus species. That's going to be our answer. Fungus species. The answer for number 35. Next, let's look at numbers 36 to 40.